All right, here we go. Today we have John Pennisi, former made man of the Lucchese crime family. Welcome to VladTV.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you have a very interesting story, and this is our first time actually talking, so I want to start in the very beginning. So you grew up in Ozone Park.
I grew up in both Ozone Park and Howard Beach.
And Howard Beach, right? And that's Queens.
Queens, correct.
Okay, and what was that like in the 70s and 80s?
It was heavily entrenched by organized crime. The whole neighborhood. There was social clubs on almost every other block. They were, it was all over. Predominantly, it was a Gambino family area, but all the families were there, and all the families had social clubs in the neighborhood.
Okay, and your family wasn't actually involved in the Mafia?
Not really, no.
Okay, and you described growing up in a broken home.
Correct.
Okay, explain that.
So at a young age of around 6, my father decided to leave the marriage and leave my mother and myself. And I was the only child. And that's it. He left, and I lived with my mother up until I believe the age of 9. And at that point, my mother was always working and trying to give me everything I had. And we lived in an apartment, and my father winded up buying a house in Ozone Park. I lived with my mother in Howard Beach. And I wind up going to live with him and now his new wife at the age of 9.
Okay, so as you're growing up, and you described the area being very connected to the Mafia,
Correct.
Primarily the Gambino crime family. At what point did you start to kind of get mixed up in that?
At an early age, because there was guys always around, and my mother knew a lot of people. My mother came from Eastern New York, Brooklyn, and a lot of these guys also came from Eastern New York, Brooklyn, and then they moved on to either Howard Beach, Ozone Park, or Long Island. And so there was always guys around that, we went to parties, I had barbecues, so there was always people like that around. And as a young man, a young boy, not even a young man. And so it was around me, I was aware of it.
Okay, but when did you start getting mixed up in it yourself?
As a teenager. I would say as probably 14, 15 years old, something like that.
Okay, and what did you start doing in the beginning?
At 14 years old, I started driving a truck for actually it was a Lucchese. It was mixed with different families, had a trucking company outside the airport on 150th Street. And basically what the company did was that if the airline lost your luggage, they would get this company and they would retrieve it on the next flight or whenever it did come in, and we would deliver it to your house. And basically they would ransack the luggage and take anything valuable out and then deliver it. And I was driving a truck at 14 years old, working for them. So that's was the first thing that I've ever did. And was, excited to be around these guys. And, so I was a young guy at 14.